Hello, dear Svitlana.
Hello, dear Arne.
Nice to see you. How is it going?
Nice to see you too. I'm doing great. I can't wait for my semester to finish and finally have enough time to enjoy winter. How about you?
Well, I'm enjoying the winter fully through riding the bicycle to work every day, riding it back every day. It's actually a lot of fun. I didn't expect it because if you have the right clothes, then it's
Hmm.
then it's fun. And at the moment, I have so many interesting podcasts and audiobooks. I read the Will Smith book, or like I listened to it, which is in my
Hmm.
opinion one of the greatest audiobooks ever, and I've listened to a lot.
Oh.
It's really well done because he's imitating the people he met in his life, family members, or even personalities like Nelson Mandela, or Muhammad Ali, and others. And it's very enjoyable. Is the book good? Yes, to a big degree, it is very good. On the other hand, it's I'm a little bit torn about it. And there's a little tiny chapter about chess.
Mm, that's
It's
cool.
probably just 3 or 4 pages, but it's very interesting because he learned chess from his father, who was very much into trying to get everything done perfectly. And the father taught him to play the Italian game, or the
Mhm.
Jacopiano. And Will Smith discovered, because he always lost against his father, that he was better with the Ruy Lopez. And then he won against his father. And when the father saw that, he said, like, "So what is that?" And Will Smith says, it's check. "No, it's not check. What is that? You got to tell me. What is this?" "Checkmate." "That's damn right. It's checkmate." And then the father stood up, took his cigarette, his bottle of whiskey, and went out. And that was the last game they ever played against each other. Fun
Nice.
story.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is it plays into the whole book a little bit, this little chapter, because he mentions it every now and then, that it's this one
Mhm.
thing. And I see the parallels to some other players or grandmasters or really good players, how the parents are normally the one who teach a game or of chess the very first time. And for example, Hikaru Nakamura mentions that if he wouldn't have won a couple of games, which his father, I think, lost on purpose, he wouldn't have gotten the motivation to
Mhm.
continue. And it's very interesting, the
Yeah.
psychology about it yet,
Yeah.
because
Often we look up to our parents, so so it matters a lot their opinion and their support on
and the
about it.
approval and stuff like this, and
Yeah.
it's so different for so many players. It's really interesting. It's yeah, it's worth writing a book about it. I'm not going to do this, but hope it would be very interesting to see loads of chess players, how their relation to chess is when they learned it, and what made them move into a direction where they say, like, that's my profession now, I'm playing chess.
Mhm. Yeah.
Talking
Good.
about chess,
Yeah.
what smart moves do you have on the table today for us?
Okay, so with the World Championship match being more than halfway done, we've seen many exciting games, and it was not boring draws as some people were upset about at the beginning. Um, and well, at the time we are recording this, Magnus is up by 2 games. And well, his chances to win the match look pretty good. Do you have an opinion about it, Arne? Do you
Yes, of
think he's
course.
gonna win easily in the end?
No, and because everybody says it's done, and if you would bet on Magnus, you would probably win no matter what happens. I do not think that it is over absolutely clearly. I think
Mhm.
Jan can win at least one game, or maybe even two. I'm not so sure that everything is set and done. And I don't understand why the idea is that it is a clear thing. I mean, I get the idea that Magnus is just definitely one of the greatest players out there.
Mhm.
But it depends. What if he sleeps super bad for some reason? What if he eats the wrong food? What if something in his life happens, which is like shaking him a little bit? And of course, he can be very much like a professional machine in even those points where something interrupting in life is coming. But so
Yeah,
many
but
things can
it's
happen.
not, I feel like, not just up to him, right? If Nepo suddenly gets super motivated, I think he can show some very good play.
True.
Well, I do agree that Magnus winning seems like a very likely scenario, but today I thought I would give some hope to the Nepo fans with today's episode, and we will look at the biggest comebacks in World Championships history.
Beautiful. I love that.
I
Excellent.
thought there was no better time to do this than now, and because we're about to see this match nearing its end, so let me share the screen, and we will take a look at 3 games from World Championship matches from the past, and we will see the big comebacks that these players pulled off despite the odds being heavily not in their favor. So the first game we have goes all the way back. We're going to start at the very beginning at the first ever official World Championship match. And Steinitz was playing Zukertort. And the way it went was Steinitz won the first game. Then Zukertort won 4 in a row. So we're about to see game 5. So the exact game that Steinitz had to play after losing 4 consecutive games. So you can just imagine how that must have felt.
Brutal.
This is why I think the psychological strength is one of the most important factors in these matches, not to let the result get to you. Spoiler, Steinitz ended up winning the match, and now we know him as our first official world champion. But as you can tell, it was definitely not easy to do, but still possible. He had a 3-point deficit, and he ended up winning the match anyway. He won like 12.5 to 7.5. So it was a big it was a big margin too. So he made a really
crazy,
full comeback. Yeah,
I didn't even know about that, to be honest. Sorry.
So this is let's look at the game. So this is kind of why I don't like you said, that many people who completely lost all hope. Like every single headline I see is like, is the match over?
It's over.
And things like that. I'm not saying I would bet my money on it, but
same here.
Miracles do happen. Yeah. Miracles do happen, and everything in life is possible. So let's get to some historical comebacks in World Championship matches. Hopefully it'll give us some hope that it's still not that clear. So in this game, we had the Ruy Lopez, we had the Berlin. The Berlin, actually. So I was surprised to see that it was already played back in the day. So that is an opening that withstood the test of time by a lot. Right now there is a different line. So in the game, Steinitz was white, by the way. He played knight c3 and just played in the center. Right now, I do believe the more used line is bishop f1 and play something with d4.
Whoa.
But instead, he chose a different setup, which might have been more popular at the time, and went bishop d3. So this is slightly different, but still one of the main ideas is to have your pieces looking towards the king side, and he is getting ready for an attack. The rook is already on e3. Then b3 happened. The white is trying to fianchetto the bishop, and we are about to get to one of the important moments. So I think this is the first interesting moment in the game. So a rook exchange has been made, and an exchange of one minor piece, but still there's a lot of pieces there, and a lot of white's pieces are looking towards the king side and looking to make some deadly threats. My question is, so Steinitz went bishop b2 on the previous move and gave up the pawn on d2 rather easily. And I want to ask you, why do you think he would give up this pawn so easily, and what did he have in mind on the capture?
Well, it looks to me as if you can have some nice counterplay with moving the knight to e4, attacking the bishop, and
Mhm.
threatening to go further to f6. If the bishop pulls back to g5, it looks just pretty good for white. I wonder if there's any better move, maybe? Maybe you don't have to immediately attack the bishop. But I think once the knight is getting a bit more active, there is a lot of good play for white. I think even maybe in
Knight
the right
e4.
way, it is some mate threats there, which you have to
Yeah, knight
counter.
e4 is one of the is part of the right idea. It's best when it's followed up with another active move that gains in tempo, and it's bishop c4. So when it's
Aha.
followed up with this move and then knight e4, that's even better. Because right now we're attacking on f7, and we're going to keep attacking for a while. And there's basically no defense, and some of these lines I thought were really nice. So for example, queen f6, that would defend it. We're actually going to, well, we can do a lot of things, but one of the nicest ones that I saw was to take the queen and then play the knight back to b1 and attack both pieces at the same time.
Okay. Oh,
Bishop
that's
g5 and
interesting.
f4. I thought it was a nice line.
Oh.
So there were that was one of the refutations. And let's say in case of knight d6 or something like that, now we go back to your knight e4 move, and we can obviously take
Yeah,
advantage of the f6 square.
that cannot be
So
good for black.
so yeah, this would have been the reason why the pawn on d2 is not really ideal to take. So white just gets a really strong attack and is pretty much winning in all of the lines. So instead, he played c6, which was a good call. He didn't take the pawn, and that prepares d5. The d5 advance in the center, and to finally develop the bishop and the rook, which have been standing there for
Yeah.
a while
And
already.
stopping c4, of course. Bishop c4.
Yeah. So so then Steinitz plays knight to e4. So once again, we're gonna try to take control of those weak squares around the king. So we're bringing more pieces towards the king side. So now queen e3, maybe eyeing some queen h6 ideas for later, and also being on the e file could end up being really
Oh,
useful.
yeah.
d5, queen to d4. So one of the other
Ooh.
ideas was to bring the queen and the bishop both onto this long diagonal, which looks very, very scary in my opinion.
Yeah.
But of course, black can still try to defend and be completely fine. So for now, it is all fine. But of course, it is white who is pressing, and we are about to get to this moment where I think this is one of the most important moments in the game, because it is the big decision of what do you do after you have developed your pieces to their best squares. This is one of those situations where you seemingly have very few improvements that are left, and usually that's the moment where people get confused of what they're supposed to do in this case. And
Very well summarized. Yeah. Interesting. That's.
so how would you continue in this situation? What do you think there is left to improve, if there is anything?
Oh, what is there to improve? Yeah. So, amateur as I am, I would probably. Well, the first instinct is to move my queen to h4, but that is just like, it's really like useless, I think. I believe it just helps black to develop a little more, get a bit more, yeah, the piece is even more active in attacking the queen, and the queen doesn't do any damage there.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
of
doesn't do any threats.
of course, f5, queen h6, but then I mean, first of all, f5 doesn't have to be played. Anyway, another idea would be to maybe push some pawns forward.
Which
And
ones?
you either have the option for, let's say, c4 maybe, because that opens the line for the bishop who wanted to be on c4 anyway, and that looks pretty good. or of course the very newly and often played h4.
Right.
f4, I don't see anything. There's no rook behind it. There's no other piece defending this pawn, and I'm not seeing any big impact. I mean, f5 is very well defended. So it's, c4 or h4.
Well, the reason why I'm not into c4 or f4 is because, well, on f4 they can trade queens, which is what we want to
Oh,
avoid,
yes.
right? And on c4, maybe also we're gonna threaten to
Yeah, no,
trade.
c4 is a bad
So
move.
h4 is the one that,
Yeah.
like you have mentioned, and that is a very important moment in the game, because now White's threat of playing h5 cannot be avoided, and this bishop here is actually really happy on this diagonal. You said it wanted to be on the other one, but I think it's really happy here on d3 because it's gonna open up the king side here, and this will considerably weaken Black's king.
Okay.
So h5 followed up. So now the thing is, it's not too great to take, well, which is obvious, but still you need to have a refutation in mind. And it is very simple that the queen is coming to h6. And I mean, how are you going to defend that mate if you're
if you're playing
f5?
Play f5. Yeah, it's checkmate immediately.
So exactly, it's the point is that the diagonal opens up and the queen just comes over to h6 and just finishes the game. So in the game, though, Zukertort defended rather well, and he still held the game for a bit, but it ended up still not being enough. So here, try to guess the next move that Steinitz played.
Immediately, my instinct is queen h6, of course. Has a good spot there, probably can do some more things. Let's think about some other moves. Exchanging the pieces doesn't help that much. Well, there's some nice pressure on f6 too. But
and the question is, how can we increase
exactly? How can we do that? So the knight could be on h5 if it would be able to go there. Is this even tactical? What happens on e4?
No, it's not. It's not tactical.
No, cannot take back. That's a check, and then is this really not working? No, I don't think so. How can we? Well, okay, there is an idea now. Maybe White has enough time for a rook shift. Rook e3, rook f3.
Exactly. It's a rook lift. You found it. So
rook lift.
The rook is going to e3 and to f3.
Yeah, cool.
Rook shift could work. Could work too. I mean, why not? But yeah, normally it's called a rook lift, where the rook usually goes on the third rank and starts participating in the attack. So basically, if Black does nothing, the rook is just coming to f3 and is going to be super hard to defend on f6. So that is one of the decisive moves, I think, that made the game more in White's favor. So technically White is already winning, but it ended up being a lot more complicated than it seemed, because the next sequence of moves surprised me. So knight f5 makes perfect sense. You're bringing the knight in. Bishop c5 happened, and then what the two players did, I'm not sure why they did it, but they had a repetition for like 4 or 5 times. So technically this is supposed to be a threefold already, but no one claimed it. So I actually looked it up, and I wanted to see if the rule existed at the time. And to me, it seems like it did, but it was just not a common way at the time to have a draw. So I guess both of them were waiting for the opponent to offer or something, or I think the bigger I think the bigger factor is they were just trying to get to like move 40. I'm not sure that exist at the time either. I mean, it's 1886. It's very hard to know.
They simply didn't know the rules back then.
Yeah, the two world champion guys didn't really know the rules of chess too well. But
Funny, yeah.
So they repeated the moves many times, but objectively the position is totally winning. So I actually think that Steinitz didn't want to draw, and um he either did it to gain some time, or maybe a psychological trick on the opponent to do. You never know. And he did end up deviating after a bit, after 4 or 5 repetitions, but that was a surprising moment for me. So can you spot one of the winning continuations that Steinitz was having trouble seeing?
I cannot. I thought about for a second, like knight to f5 would be a good move, but I mean, there is there's so much going on. So this is a very complicated position. Now, I think very sexy could be the move bishop takes f6 maybe. Let's see.
I do not see what happens
So
after.
of course the king cannot take the knight because it's checkmate. But
Right,
what
the
happens
bishop.
now? So there's a doesn't work. Yeah, well, no, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
I
I don't
thought
think it's
about the
working.
check, and then I can take the knight, and then I can take the queen, but it's not working like that.
Yeah, but that would have been nice. It's
Very.
it's not the one though.
Yeah, well, then I would continue with the repetition with the knight to f5.
That
Now,
is not
so
the right mindset. How are you gonna make a comeback in the match if you have that mindset? That's not.
that's a very good point that you're actually mentioning. How can you make a comeback if you want a comeback? And I think that Wilhelm Steinitz wanted a comeback. So how can you change
Einstein.
this? Did I say Einstein?
Him Einstein.
Oh my goodness. One of our world chess champions, Albert Einstein. Oh boy. He was such a genius. My God, he made so many inventions and he was a world
Wasn't he
chess
friends with one
champion.
of the world champions?
He probably was like an
I think it's a famous story. It might even
yeah,
be Steinitz. I'm not sure who it was.
because of the same Steins in the name. Why did I really say Albert Einstein? How funny.
Yeah.
Okay. E equals. Okay. How about? Oh, come on, Arnie, find a move now. Have you found it at home? Do you know this game at home? Is this like something which? Do
I think
you
it was
know your
Lasker actually.
championship games? Sorry.
Sorry, I think it was Lasker actually who was friends with Einstein.
Oh, okay.
But it's one of them, the world champions. Anyways,
Yeah. Yeah, Steinitz was probably a bit too old for that. Okay, I know it. I found it, I think, finally.
yeah,
It's queen to h4.
that is the best way to win. Queen h4. You're right, and the idea is pretty interesting that you freed up the g4 square for the knight.
Didn't
So
see
you're
that,
gonna bring the
but
knight
yeah.
back, and go like that. And that should have been the end. All of it is pretty much forced. And well, queen h4 is the winning move. What happened in the game is also close to winning. So he basically went into an end game being a pawn up, which it's a very pleasant endgame to play. And he ended up winning this endgame after a long fight, but he was a pawn up. And so I think we're going to stop here, and you just have to trust me that he did end up winning in the end. So
I trust you with that, yeah.
That was one of the comebacks to mention, because I mean, losing 4 in a row, I don't think that has happened in any other world championship.
That's a killer. So the question remains, of course, well, back then, those were different times. They had no engines. But now everything is calculated. Why are my hands so yellow? I'm not smoking or something. Oh, well, just so funny. I saw this yesterday in the video and I thought, like, this looks so odd. They're not.
And then
yellow.
we wonder why the episodes are like an hour and a half.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You might, because we're talking about my hands looking yellow. Okay, next game. Mr. Euwe. How do you pronounce that name?
Euwe.
Wow, that was
I don't
actually,
know.
I think that was perfect.
Really? I don't know.
It sounded so Dutch. I will ask Robert Rees. He's in our
Actually,
studio at the moment.
oh yeah. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but I think Euwe probably how I would say it. So yeah, we have another historic matchup. Max Euwe against Alexander Alekhine. Once again, two hard names to pronounce.
Yeah, true.
And this was the only match where Alekhine failed to defend his title. And although it was very close. So this was a long format. It lasted 30 games. So, I mean, it's a lot longer compared to the formats we have nowadays. And so after 7 rounds, Max Euwe was down by 3 points. So it was 5-2. But as we know, he managed to pick himself back up and actually ended up winning this match and taking away Alekhine's world championship title. So after 7 games, he was down by 3 points. Then he equalized the score by game 24. And what we're about to see is game 26, which was decisive in his comeback victory to win the match. And he won it 15.5 to 14.5. So it was incredibly close.
Whoa, see what can happen.
Yeah. And these are both, you see, the first time was he was down by 3 points. This time he was down by 3 points. So it is even more than Nepo.
So that actually means Carlsen has to win another point so Nepo can have his comeback.
Exactly.
Easy as that.
That is what's going to happen. But unfortunately, we have 2 times less games nowadays than they had.
I hope Nepo calculated this instance. Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully Nepo's team took this into consideration and they didn't give too much of a handicap to Magnus.
Can you tell me bishop b4? Do you know how the variation is called? Is it Dutch defense? Okay, and that's the modern Stonewall. I'm just reading it off.
Yeah, you can see it. You can read it. Yeah. So it started with the Dutch. Yeah. So it started with the Dutch, and the Stonewall itself is something like this.
Yeah. Okay.
But here that didn't end up happening. Here it ended up going with b6. So that's why I guess they call it the modern Stonewall. But yeah, so it's not the most typical Stonewall, but it's still all part of the Dutch defense.
Okay.
So that is how the game started. So that's what always happens in the Stonewall. You know, the knight goes to e4. Usually that's one of the ideas, and white side goes to e5. But here the difference is that d5 hasn't been played. Whenever d5 is played, then the plans change a bit. The bishop goes to e8 to d7 to e8 and then gets activated somewhere here. So that's a typical Stonewall bishop plan. But anyway, that's not happening here.
Yeah.
We are here at the first critical moment, I guess. Which piece do you capture here? Would you take the knight or would you take the bishop?
Taking the knight must be number one priority. I think taking the bishop has to be a trap because it's too obvious.
Yeah, taking the bishop is a trap.
There's a check.
Well, not particularly a big trap where you lose, but it is the kind of thing where you probably should not, you probably would not enjoy this position. Because
no, definitely not.
You went back, yeah.
I'm even thinking if you take, you're a piece down, so you have to take the rook. Yeah. So it's really tough.
Yeah.
That's
no. You're here. White is up in exchange, but it is not a very pleasant exchange.
But isn't it even better than to just take the knight on c6 after that to get out of this? Because I really prefer black's position here.
I mean. Well, then what happened? Then I think you lost a pawn, right? Did you lose a pawn?
6, 7, 8.
Wait, down 2 pawns.
2 pawns. Oh well, I cannot get.
That happened because king e2 would check and knight e2 would check and then knight d4.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
So yeah.
So
2 pawns not worth it.
Huh. Okay.
So yeah, you were right about taking back the knight. so then black exchanged on g2. Now I'm gonna fast forward the next part a bit because it was just a long middle game maneuvering phase. So black took control of the center, tried to open it up a bit. Then white tried to do the same thing in return. c6 became a weakness for a bit, so black had to do something about it to close the center. The knight went back to remaneuver itself to e3, so this was a long maneuvering phase. And here comes another big moment where Max Euwe sacrificed a piece for 3 pawns. Can you see how he did it?
My goodness, because I was just a bit like, how the heck could white even get a better position here? Because I don't like white's position right now. But now that you mention that you can get some initiative by getting 3 pawns for a piece, I believe the combination has to start with knight taking f5, then taking d6, and then some other pawn will fall somewhere else, I get.
The one on e4.
Yes. Yeah, there we go.
Exactly. So you found it, and this is exactly what he went for.
That's
so
beautiful.
He sacrificed a piece for 3 pawns, which is not that clear just yet, and it's not going to be clear for the next while, because black does have a pretty good compensation. This next move is pretty nice. Knight to d2. So his idea is to open up the space for his pawn to move forward and to actually make it shown that he has a big center and he has powerful pawns. Then black tried to open up the position a bit to actually make use of his pieces. So the side with the pieces probably wants to create an attack, which is something that pawns can't really effectively defend against. And by the way, I don't think a piece against 3 pawns is in my imbalances thing. That's the one imbalance that we do not have.
That's fine, I think.
But yeah, so maybe around this point, how would you evaluate? Would you rather pick the side with the 3 pawns or the side with the piece?
I like playing with pawns more normally, but this looks bad. Look, there is the threat to taking f4. I cannot really fulfill the plan of playing e4. Oh, I can play e5 actually.
Why not?
Yeah.
No, that's what happened next.
Okay, it gets a bit better, but of course there's this nasty bishop on d4, so we have to get rid of this one. I hope we do not have to take a rook for this matters, but the knight can take him on f3.
You're like a wizard. You're just predicting the future. Yeah. That's actually what happened later.
Call me Arnie Einstein. That's
yeah. So I actually think playing with the pawns is a lot simpler in most games. Like in a fast time control, I'd pick the pawns for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's so simple. You don't need to come up with anything. The pawns just go forward. Like you're not responsible for too many calculations there. But even objectively, this is a fairly good position for white. I think white is better in most of the lines. Some inaccuracies followed up because well, it's they were both. It's a really complicated position, and they can't both play perfectly. It was actually best, according to the computer, to give back.
I just thought about that. This must have been the best idea for black to get give it back. Yeah.
It is to give it back, but it's a hard decision to make psychologically because now you're suddenly like down a pawn.
Yeah.
And you have to rely more on the initiative, and you don't really have the material on your side. So it is hard to do that.
This block is
because
just
then you admit,
too strong. Yeah, true.
You admit that the opponent was right in his sacrifice because you had nothing better to do than to sacrifice it back. So the way the game continued with queen e8. So black is trying to bring his pieces more towards the king side and start something on the g file. So he made his next move, rook g8, which was nice. Little sacrifice in return.
Yeah.
Now knight f3, that's another inaccuracy, but it's not really it's not really a huge deal. Try to guess the next move, which you already predicted was going to happen. But how do we defend against the mate on g2?
Yeah, that is tough because there's no queen c2. There's no rook g1. Maybe there is a rook g1 actually. I think that's the only real good move.
It's not the only good move, but rook
But it,
g1 is what happened in the
yeah,
game.
exactly. Because then, yeah, the bishop, once the bishop takes, the knight is defending, and we have this nice diagonal now.
Knight g5 and knight h4 were the other two
Oh, okay.
defensive moves, but I like rook g1 best. I think it's a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
way to defend. So rook g1, he's giving away more material for to just support his pawns and to avoid any counterplay from the opponent. Knight g5, and well, you can tell that white is basically down a rook.
Yeah.
But the pawns are just so powerful that they completely make up for it. So, well, the rest of the game I think is just beautiful. So I think I'm just gonna show it and not make you actually solve any tactics.
Let's go for it.
So basically, black doesn't have any options to move away his knight, or else knight f7 is gonna follow up. So he has to keep that knight there and at least try to trade it for one pawn. But white still has very good pawns, and also the knight keeps coming to a strong square. So now it's on e6, and it is not going to leave anytime soon. So despite being down material for the whole game, now he wants to trade queens, because trading queens really helps him in connecting his pawns back. And well, this is exactly what happened in the game. And now already it was best for black to admit that he is he's not going to win this endgame, and he should try and hold for the draw by sacrificing the exchange and playing this. So this is still really complicated to calculate, and only with the most precise moves he can have drawing chances. And it's by playing rook f5, so not rook back to e8. That's passive. Rook f5 is the move, and then on rook e3 you have to really rush to bring the king in, and you also have to make the decision not to take any of white's pawn, and to actually defend your own first. And well, this is probably the best black could have gone, which looks pretty difficult to defend, but computer would probably have pretty good defensive chances. But yeah, it's two pawns, which you know, rook endgames are complicated, so it could have still had some chances to hold. But he played rook f5 right away, and h6, which was the decisive mistake. So now he can no longer play rook takes e6, so he misses chance, and Max Euwe uses a little tactic and plays knight d8. So now he had the chance to move his knight, and the point is that he cannot capture on e5 because of this fork. And once the knight moved away, that clears up the space for the pawns, and the pawns just kept going forward, and that is how the game ended. Well, 2 more moves, but eventually the pawns did do their job, and he ended up winning back.
Beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, so that was one of his wins. Once again, gave him a comeback score, and he ended up winning the match because of this game. So, you know, even being down 3 games is not the end of it all.
If you have some games left.
Yeah, if you have 30 games left, ideally. So, and we have the last one, which was a big match. Some even called it the match of the century. You know, it was a huge deal because it wasn't only the battle between these two players. So this is Fischer against Spassky. It wasn't just the match against them, but it was even on a bigger scale, the battle between the Soviets and the Western world. You know, it was you can imagine in the times of the Cold War, it would have been a big deal. So this was a very historic match, and we're about to see how Fischer won this game. And maybe surprising to hear, but Fischer was down in this match at the beginning. And well, the reason for that is pretty funny. Well, so this match took place in Reykjavik, and Bobby Fischer lost the first game. And then can you guess what happened in the second game?
I think I remember the story. Now, just get my mind back to them. So he refused to play the second game because was it that already? Not yet.
It's similar. He just didn't show up for the second game
Ah, yeah. Okay.
because he had some complaint to the organizers. He didn't like the cameras or the noise or
Yeah.
it was something about the cameras. It was something about the organizers. So he didn't. They didn't fulfill his conditions, so he boycotted against it, and he didn't show up for the game. He did show up for the third one though,
Yeah.
and after that, but from the get-go, he had a 2 point. He was down by 2 points, so he losing the first game and then not showing up to the second one.
Yeah.
But well, the rest we already know that he did end up winning the match by quite a bit. He won 7-3, I think was the final winning score, and the rest were draws. But anyway, he had to recover from his 2-loss deficit, and he stormed back and ended up winning the match 12.5 to 8.5. It would be. So he did recover, but Spassky didn't end up making a comeback. So this is game 6, I believe. And we're not looking at it from the very beginning, because the beginning had nothing particularly interesting about it. So we're going to start from somewhere around the middle game. And Fischer is playing white here, and Spassky is playing black. So this seems like a fairly normal position to get out of the opening. We have a situation of the hanging pawns here. So do you know basically how to play against those, or what these positions usually bring?
No idea.
Well, the hanging pawns is kind of an interesting topic. They can either be a big strength or a big weakness, because they're there in the center, and they can help increase your piece activity. But also, if you lose one of them, like, you're losing the second one, and they can also be targets. So it's one of those things that can be a strength and can be a weakness. So that's why that's an interesting thing about.
That I know, I think, because if one pushes forward, the other one gets weak, always like that kind of thing.
So can you find a way how to improve white's pieces here? We're going to be looking at it from white's side. It is an interesting way. That's why I'm stopping at this moment.
Okay, well, it must be. Why don't I remember this position? This is the first thing which I'm like confused about. Now,
do you know all the rest of the games of this match?
I don't. But of course,
Are you supposed to remember?
I don't know. You have to know your Fischer Spassky games, I guess.
Yeah.
So does it have to do something with the knight moving to d4?
It does. That was what has been played. So it's a really
looks very tempting.
Nice way to activate the knight because of the spin. So black would not be able to take it. So that's why it was a good way to activate. So next, I think black is already getting a bit nervous. So this queen f8 move is a bit shaky. And it allows white's very nice continuation after, which completely transforms the position into a different direction. And it starts with a trade and then with a pawn break. Can you see what I'm talking about?
Well, not yet. I mean,
first a trade and then a pawn break.
So by trade, you mean the knight takes e6, I guess?
Yes, the trade is fairly obvious.
Pawn break, you probably mean e4?
Exactly, yeah. E4. So E4 is a very thematic move to actually take advantage of these hanging pawns. So
yeah, that looks good
in the game. So in the game, Spassky plays d4, which I think is one of the big mistakes in the game. He probably could have taken it. And although there's nothing concrete here that makes white, I don't know, win back the pawn immediately, but those are the pawns that you do not really want to play with. And I'm sure that Fischer had some like very active play in mind. For example, you can try to go for something like f3, and you're going to win back either one of the pawns, or eventually you will, and if not, you just get big compensation.
Okay.
So yeah, those are not the pawns that you want to play with, which is why I assume he actually closed up the center and played d4. So after this happens, what do you think would be the next plan now that we have established that one of the pawns to move, which should be to our advantage? What should we do now?
Oh, so many options. Looking at f4, looking at bishop c4, looking at probably that cannot work, but who knows? Bishop a6. No, it cannot work. Rooks double
we don't
up.
want
And no.
pawns here. Yeah, no, I'm really scared about pawns in this game.
Yeah, I think bishop c4 looks the most natural to me.
Right, bishop c4 and f4 is a combined plan that you mentioned, and that is exactly what happened. So he started with f4, and then
top mood today.
and then bishop c4 followed up soon after. So first he plays e5. So this That's e5 move is super useful because now you're preventing the knight from ever coming out this way. And bishop c4 happened next. And suddenly white is already on the verge of winning. I mean, I would evaluate it like that just because even by looking at these pieces, you can just tell that it's completely dominating as white. But these positions are still can be hard to play because well, you don't have any straight up winning tactic, right? So how do you usually act in such positions? Do you try to find tactics right away, or do you take it slow and improve your pieces bit by bit?
Obviously try to find the tactic with every single quick move, but I guess.
And you don't just do it in such positions. You do it in every position.
Right from the first move. So probably the best thing is to just slowly, like a boa constrictor, take advantage of more and more pieces, get a bit more positional. Yeah, do the right things.
Yeah. We do both at the same time. So
because
you want to make sure.
Because once that happens, the tactics will follow automatically.
Exactly. Yeah. The tactics usually, whenever you're much better, the tactics will end up being there when the time is right. So one of the good ways to continue here is to play b3, or you could have played rook f2. Doesn't exactly matter. And you just want to make sure that the opponent has no counterplay. And once you have established that, then your attack gets a lot easier. So yeah, one of the things in these positions is you don't have to rush because your advantage is just so big that you don't have to prove it immediately. But of course, if you do have an opportunity for a breakthrough, like for example, this f5, then you can go for it whenever you wish. So the rest of the game was really precise by Fischer. He just doubled his rooks. He put all of his pieces on their best squares, and well, now there's a lot of good winning moves, but I particularly like what he did. It's just h4. He wants to make sure that the knight is never coming to g5, and you just lock him out.
Do you see the pattern? It's h4 again. Nepo.
It is h4 again.
Nepo, see the signs. It's not h5, it's h4.
It's h4. Yeah, you have to play. Actually, I think, have you seen, they're playing, they're probably playing right now, but
they're playing right now, and they're playing the English, so Nepo.
Yeah, they were playing the English, which I'm glad to see that he changed up his openings.
Let me quickly peek into it, if I may.
I mean, it's not going to be relevant by the time the episode comes out.
Oh, it's a draw. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a draw?
I'm just kidding. Okay, let me quickly see the evaluation. Looks super draw, unfortunately. Meh.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Well, we're gonna see what happens. He's saving his comeback wins for later.
There we go. We're not Nepo fans, just for you outside. We're not Nepo fans. We just want to have it a little bit more exciting in the end. Yeah. Would be nice, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We also not. Are you a Carlsen fan? No.
I like, for this particular match, I already told you, I just wanted to see interesting games. That was my approach. I didn't have a particular person.
Exactly.
But now I'm actually kind of rooting for Nepo to at least like not make it that one-sided, because I feel so bad how all of these like reporters are out there, and they're like, after his losses,
like,
they're asking like, so very few people in history have recovered from such a from such loss, from such a bad score. What do you think about it? It's like, okay, thank you for
well, I
making
think most of the people are right. Thank you very much for this very insightful question. I'm happy I could
yeah.
answer that. Yeah, I feel great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. I hope you have a great article. No, but
Yeah.
it's I think we're very similar with that. We're no I very often I vote for the underdog. And when it changes, when when I was voting for the underdog, and then the underdog has the upper hand, and I'm voting for the other team, which is
For
to
the other
get
one.
back. Yeah, I wish everybody
Yeah.
could win.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but I mean, if I bet my money, I would bet it on Magnus. So
would you? What about the value bet? You
what is the value of that?
well, if the bet is so high that it would be worth putting in the money, let's say 10 Canadian dollars for Nepo. If Nepo wins, you get 100 back.
Oh, that's not.
200.
I need it to be more
I
than
need to
that.
think.
I need you
You're,
to higher the
you're,
stakes.
exactly. So yeah,
No,
at
but
one
10
point,
I would bet. 10 is fine. I would bet it on anyone.
that's what I mean, right?
So
So
yeah.
yeah, there's
But if
always
it
like,
was my house, I would bet it on
but
Magnus.
if it would be your house, yeah, that but if you would get an remote island for that, for example, and
Betting my house on Nepo and getting a remote island in return.
yes,
I
exactly.
don't know. I don't know how badly I want
A
a
new
remote island.
house, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, probably, yeah. It's like, okay, it's 100 Canadian dollars again. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's get back. So Fischer
Well,
won this.
we're almost at the end,
Great.
because he's already in such a dominating position, and although he's not up material, it's just fully dominating, and White is winning. He just completely made that knight stuck on h7. None of the squares that the knight can even go to. So that was very precise play by him, and he just concluded it by activating even more, putting the pawn on e6, and soon after he's just completely
Devilish.
winning. Makes some slow moves like a4 to make sure there's nothing there. He doesn't need to rush. He's not the one who needs to stress here and make every move and calculate a billion tactics and make sure he's not losing. So that's the pleasant thing about playing these positions, is you can take it slow, and nothing is going to happen to your position, and your opponent is the one that has to be careful. And yeah, make some slow moves. Rook f2. I just think it's so horrible for the opponent to play this, because he knows it's bad, but I mean, the other guy is just making fun of it, and by just playing rook f2, rook f3. Maybe they're trying to make the time control. I'm not sure what the time control rules were at the time, so that might be it. And yeah, finally he repositions the pieces in the right way, so he plays queen to e4. Now there's a big threat here, which is going to happen eventually, and we do finally see the final blow with rook f6, and this ended up finishing pretty soon after queen f4. So
delightful.
Yeah, so those were the three games that were comebacks in their world championship matches. So I just wanted to show that it's not over yet, and that anything can happen. And these comebacks have happened before in the World Championships history, and they were also super interesting.
That was really, really interesting and insightful. I didn't actually know there were that many comebacks.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah.
I only included three.
You just gave a little insight. Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. We will look forward on what Nepo and Carlsen are coming up with in the next couple of days. Just a quick reminder for you, your first Tritz trainer is out now. We've mentioned it a couple of times already. You can take a look at the video below. Just click on the link of... why do I always miss the first word, material imbalances?
Understanding material
Understanding. I thought
It
it's a
doesn't.
word which starts with U. And like, what can it be? Understanding
It's
material
about material
imbalances.
imbalances, just like we saw in Game 6 of Carlsen Nepo.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was absolutely because there were two material imbalances
Right.
in one game
One
after
transposed into another. Yeah, that's
it
what tends to
was
happen with material imbalances. Hopefully, we're gonna see more.
it was definitely the most exciting game in my opinion. Of course, it was the longest world championship game
Yeah.
anyway. So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
we see each other next week. Everybody have a lovely week, and till then, bye bye.